Welcome to Beyond the Brink. This show focuses on global events that are pushing people to their limits and driving them to the brink of change. Hi, my name is Melissa.
And my name is Christy.
Hey, Christy, glad to have
Hey,
you back.
good to see you.
If you missed our previous episodes, you can find us on vitabroadcastnetwork.com. Our YouTube channel handle is at Vita Broadcast Network. And we're also on Rumble and Twitter at Vita Broadcast, also on Facebook at Vita Broadcast. Thank you for tuning into today's episode. This builds upon our previous episodes that were based on the investigative journalism of Whitney Webb, who uncovered an intricate operations of the World Economic Forum and its prominent role in advancing the Great Reset. During our last two episodes, we talked about the multinational corporations that have unprecedented power and influence over every industry and nation state in the world. Today, we are going to try to tie these entities together and offer some parting thoughts. But before we get started, here's a word from one of our affiliate partners.
Beyond the Brink has partnered with Swan Bitcoin. We chose Swan Bitcoin because it's easy and inexpensive and the best form of financial protection if you're hit with a disaster. It's perfect for both new and experienced Bitcoiners. Set up a Bitcoin savings plan and never miss out on the dips. Get a free book, Inventing Bitcoin, the technology behind the first truly scarce and decentralized money, and $10 of Bitcoin when you use our affiliate link, vitabroadcastnetwork.com/beyond. That's vitabroadcastnetwork.com/beyond.
Very nice. I got my $10 in my free book. I recommend that highly. That book is fantastic.
Yes, yes.
So the investigative journalism of Whitney Webb, she's really what got us started down all these rabbit holes we went down the past couple of weeks.
Yes.
We found numerous materials that focused on the activities of the all the organizations that we discussed in our previous episodes. And our research skills have taught us to look into the works of the investigators who are not employed by the media industrial complex, kind of looking out beyond the powers that be, the chosen ones that are feeding us all this information.
Yeah, and they seem to parrot the same message. I mean, in all of the printed material that we reviewed, we stumbled upon a video documentary called Monopoly. It's Who Owns the World by Tim Gielen. And that, in our view, sums up all that we've talked about over these last two episodes in 1 hour. The video can be found on Rumble and on the website stopworldcontrol.com. And if you like rabbit holes, we recommend that you view this video.
Yeah, it's a great video. And if you go to that stopworldcontrol.com, there's so much more information on there. It's incredible. And when we stumbled upon it, I mean, I was just blown away. So
yeah,
if you get a chance, definitely go to it.
It's good. In the third episode, you learned about BlackRock's influence in world affairs. Economic malaise was a prediction declared by the CEO, Larry Fink. And Melissa did a great job on this in episode 3. And so why don't you take it away, Melissa, and explain what economic malaise is?
Thanks, Christy. Well, so when I heard him talking, and I really wanted everybody to watch him during that speech, and he brought up the word, we're entering in an economic malaise. And I was like, I don't even know what that word is.
Yeah.
I should have known what it was, but I didn't really know. But apparently this term is particularly associated with the 73-75 US recession. And so I kind of looked it up a little deeper. Basically, malaise means an indefinite feeling of debility or lack of health, often indicative of accompanying of an onset of an illness, or it also means a vague sense of more mental or moral ill-being. And then I started searching malaise, economic malaise, and and that's where I stumbled upon what they call Carter's one of Carter's President Jimmy Carter's speech. He had a kind of a troubling speech, and everybody labeled it, all the media labeled it the Malaise speech. And in this speech, he's talking about this malaise is caused by a profound distress in beginning a generation, or the fact that the government seemed no longer to work for a majority of Americans. And so anyway, it just, I came across it. I listened to the whole speech. We'll put a link into the description box below so that for those of you that haven't heard it, because I hadn't, you can listen to it. But I wanted to share this short little clip that I found, just a small clip of him talking. And so if I can do that now, let me get to where I can do that. And where am I? Sorry. Share my screen. There we go.
32 years ago today that Jimmy Carter gave his famous Malaise speech. He never used that term, but that's the name that was given to a speech in which the president said the country's economic woes were due in part to a crisis of confidence in the country. It has come to be known as perhaps the most politically tone-deaf speech in modern American history. Take a look.
It is a crisis of confidence. It is a crisis that strikes at the very heart and soul and spirit of our national will. We can see this crisis in the growing doubt about the meaning of our own lives and in the loss of a unity of purpose for our nation. The erosion of our confidence in the future is threatening to destroy the social and the political fabric of America. The confidence that we have always had as a people is not simply some romantic dream or a proverb in a dusty book that we read just on the 4th of July. It is the idea which founded our nation and has guided our development as a people. Confidence in the future has supported everything else. Public institutions and private enterprise, our own families, and the very Constitution of the United States. Confidence has defined our course and has served as a link.
You know what I hear in that? I hear tone deaf. I hear that I, as a leader of the free world, cannot be possibly responsible for the state of our economy right now. It is everything else but what our policies are. And I think back on that time, and it's like, gosh, we're living in that same time now. You know, I remember Jimmy Carter. I was just a teenager, and I do remember a bit about the malaise and some of the discussion of how government wasn't working for people anymore. But basically, a lot of it was his policies, and I'm going to say it was engineered. Is pretty much it's just a political philosophical mindset of how to run an economy. And the way he ran the economy was he was very sheepish. We looked weak as a country, and we had economic malaise. We were in a recession. It was difficult times. We had oil shortages and the gas lines. So that was during this period of time, I believe, when he had done that speech.
I will say this. I've never heard the speech. I listened to the whole thing, and I was quite surprised by it. So what's interesting is that small little clip, and that's where they labeled it the Malaise speech. However, if you listen to the whole thing, there's some really interesting things in that speech that he says, and some things that he wanted to do that I don't think that some of the powers that be would have really wanted to do. That's kind of surprised me. But in any event,
I've heard that about Jimmy Carter. You know, he's done more good after leaving the office than while he was in office. I think he was extremely hamstringed. I don't think he really understood the power structure of the fourth wing of government, you know, the shadow government. And Trump went through the same thing as with all presidents, unless it's quite interesting. We had one president not too long ago that had full carte blanche to pretty much set up the scenario that we're under right now, and for Joe Biden to come walk right in and continue in that footstep. Like, they didn't miss a beat. They lost 4 years, but they're catching up. I just find that to be staggering.
Yep, I do too.
But that was a slight digression, and just my opinion. I've lived it. You've lived it too, Melissa. So
yeah.
But that was a great clip, and thank you for playing that.
You're welcome. If anybody wants to see, I will post the link to the original speech also, in case and if you're listening on the radio, if you'd go to our website or the YouTube channel, you'll find it there.
Perfect. So I got a question for you. So what's the significance of BlackRock's Aladdin platform, and how it doesn't necessarily relate to an economic malaise, but it has some significance in terms of where or I should say, the state of what the world is in right now. If you can elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah. So I'll tell you, when I started looking up what malaise meant, and, doing all the research and learning what Aladdin was and how much control that they have and how much data they've had for 30 plus years,
Yes.
they sold their software to these other companies. Those companies began feeding the data in it. And like I said, they have everything. And I thought, well, isn't that convenient that you can talk about malaise, because you know darn well you've created this malaise, sir.
Yes.
This has been created, and because this keeps happening over and over again and over history, I feel like they take advantage of the situation. And so they feed the up and coming generations what they want. And because they have so much power over the money, it was really disturbing and frustrating to me. The more that I dove into it. And so, hey, if you got that kind of data on everyone, I think that's very significant. And then if you also look at, they look to Larry Fink as the person to the world is asking his opinion and asking him to come in and rescue. Why? Because he has the tools to manipulate the system, right?
Well, we were talking offline about how this just seems like Facebook of the social media world. This is like Aladdin has they have it all. They have years and years of economic data, economic financial investment patterns of their clients, and the conjoined multi platforms, I should say, between the big three. Yep. And they're all related to this platform. They all share the same information. And so they have the pulse and feel of what's going on in the world of finance. And if you look at Facebook and the social media side of things, doggone it, you get on Facebook, they know more about you and your patterns than you probably know about yourself.
They do.
And that's exactly what's going on with the Aladdin platform.
Yep. Well, you're talking about Facebook, and, if you ever see and I can't believe people fall for it and they do it, but they put these little questionnaires out there and ask you, what is this? And what do you think?
Yes.
What's your son's middle name? And, all this.
Do that. Don't do that.
And one thing is like, why are they asking these questions? Why? Because they're collecting data from you.
Yeah. Yes.
So powerful, man. It's just crazy.
I almost went off on a rabbit hole I'm not doing it. I'm zipping my mouth.
That's
so made me think of something else about face scanning, and not going there. Oh, just not going to go there.
Not today.
So what's interesting, sitting at the apex, if you look at a pyramid, who's sitting right on top and very quiet. We talked about this in episode 4, and that is the Vanguard Group.
Yep.
Now, Vanguard, it's a multinational institutional investor. And in nearly every industry on the planet, you're going to find that Vanguard is the leading shareholder. And in our way of thinking, that equates to being the world policymaker, because they have top tier ownership, if you will, of every industry in the world. I mean, I jotted some things down. I mean, we're looking at media, pharmacy, industrial, ag, food processing, veterinary companies, everything.
Yeah, they really weaseled their way in there, didn't they?
So they can weave the narrative. And when we talk about economic malaise and how all of this is engineered, this is engineered by the way that these very, very wealthy people who sit at the top of this apex, which, by the way, you will never know who they are, because they can hide themselves through nonprofits and foundations and so forth. You'll never see that, the long bloodlines of families such as J.P. Morgan or the Rockefellers, the Bushes, the Vanderbilts. I mean, you name it. They're part of Vanguard, but you won't see their names.
Right.
They will donate to the foundations and nonprofits that Vanguard invests in, such as the big three, being the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Clinton Foundation, and the horrible, repugnant George Soros Open Societies Foundation. Yes. And so it's interesting. So when you see who's the policy maker and who really goes out and gets things moving, and that would be what we would call the policy distributor, that is BlackRock. That is Larry Fink. He's on speed dial with nations leaders and corporate leaders all around the world. And if you haven't heard, I mean, we all know that BlackRock was that came in and bailed out the Federal Reserve in the 2008, 2009 economic collapse here in the United States.
Yes.
When we had all of those foreclosures, they were coming in and gobbling up all of those properties, which they now own as rental properties. And I can just tell you, doing some real estate investing myself, if you want to have a hedge fund come and buy out one of your properties, you can call on them, and they'll come on out and basically will give you 10 to 15% over what the normal market will pay. The hedge fund will come in and they'll just take it, and they won't be so stringent on the type of repairs that would be required under a traditional transaction.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Because they know that they're going to have long-term tenants. They know that there are more people who are unable to own a home than ever before. So this whole pattern, I'm sorry, I'm on a roll now. This whole pattern of you will own nothing and be happy.
Well, and then with the COVID thing, which was also, in my opinion, engineered down to the T. They were put in charge of that, the money.
Yes, they sure were.
So much power has been given to them, and we're just like da da da. I mean, I don't think they've been for what's been happening. I don't think that they were successful for the people. It's just that the people don't realize what's happening, and that's why we're coming out of our shadows of our private lives and starting up a YouTube channel and trying to help get people to think. And so it's just incredible what's been going on. It's
part of what can you do part, which we're going to talk about at the end of the show. But this leads us on to something else, which is also kind of I don't know how you would call it, but what social media threads and newscast call it is a fourth turning. And having first heard about a fourth turning, both Melissa and I, we've listened extensively to the musings of Raoul Pal, and he's a very well renowned financial investor. He knows the world markets very well, and he had this epiphany one day, and I think he did like a 2-hour video about the fourth turning, and he went very deep, philosophically deep into the subject, and was dissecting a 400-page book. And that has just made its way through social media and newscasts, and you're hearing about the fourth turning now. It's almost in everybody's conversation.
Yeah.
And so
a lot.
Yeah, we sure do. And when you take what we know about the power apex, the Vanguard, BlackRock, and State Street, and you look at the systems that they have in place for control, dominance, and then you look at the fourth turning, you'll see how all of these things come together. And I think, Melissa, you came up with a pretty cool clip on the fourth turning. It is about 4 minutes, but 4 minutes over 400 pages, it's worth the time to listen to it and give you a very brief synopsis of what a fourth turning is. Do you have that fired up? You ready?
I do. And I was just going to say, you're right. For a 400-page book, there were several different videos that kind of went over an overview, but I found this one that's 4 minutes, and then maybe it'll make you inspire you to read the book yourself, or find something else. But so let me share that.
Hey everybody, I'll be summarizing The Fourth Turning, which is a book written in the mid-90s by William Strauss and Neil Howe. It explores the generational cycles in American history via its controversial yet plausible ideas. Their theory, popularly known as Strauss-Howe generational theory, proposes that historical events shape generations, and that those generations subsequently shape historical events. The authors use a metaphor of the seasons to describe the cyclical pattern of history, with each turning representing a different season. This interplay between history and generations could be one reason why we so often note that history repeats itself. Or, more accurately, not so much a repetition, but more so a rhyme. These rhymes typically occur in 80 to 100-year cycles, and one obvious example are the major wars that have marked the history of this country. The American Revolution in the 1770s, Civil War 90 years later, and World War II 80 years after that. This book has risen in the public consciousness as we find ourselves in that 80 to 100-year zone after the last major crisis. People inherently seek knowledge about the future and use models like this to find meaning. The fundamental components of gen theory are seasons and generational archetypes. Let's talk about seasons first. Within these 80 to 100-year cycles, which are not coincidentally a healthy human lifespan, there are 4 seasons, each with the length of a 20-year generation. Keep in mind that the authors are boomers and that these titles are overly dramatic. Let's look at each of these seasons in the context of recent history. The last spring, or high, occurred immediately after World War II and featured the baby boom, which is where boomers got their name. Movies like Grease or TV shows like Leave It to Beaver or Happy Days are vivid depictions of the social conformity, innocent culture, and strong family bonds that typified the era. In The Awakening, we saw the coming-of-age boomers rebel against that conformity by engaging in counterculture and social activism. Each generation reacts to the social norms and expectations of the previous era, and therefore a tiring of social discipline would be a logical response. Civil rights, women's rights, and the sexual revolution were all major movements within this period. Millennials are born, Gen Xers are coming of age, and cultural movements such as hip-hop and grunge characterize society's total shift to individualism within the unraveling, or the third turning. With individualism comes the increasing cultural polarity, red versus blue states, rich versus poor, and recalls a previous unraveling during the Roaring '20s. Winter is a time of crisis, when society is challenged by problems that cannot be easily solved. Deepening division and conflict, institutional decay that consistently leads into a major crisis, often in the form of war, and forces a society to either confront or dismiss those problems in order to unify against an existential threat. While this is a time of great uncertainty, it's also a time of incredible opportunity, as the rigid culture of the past 80-plus years will give way to a new springtime of renewal ahead. Let's quickly talk about the 4 generational archetypes: prophet, nomad, hero, and artist. These also repeat and align with the seasons. The most recent example of the prophet generation are the boomers. They're characterized by indulged post-war childhoods, activists for social change, idealistic, passionate, and charismatic leaders, and they inspire others to pursue a higher purpose. Gen Xers, on the other hand, are neglected and are resilient during childhood. They're skeptical of authority and institutions and are innovators who challenge established norms. They're comfortable with uncertainty and change. Millennials are optimistic and confident, focused on achievement, competition, and desire to make a positive impact. Heroic figures in times of war and unrest, and are natural leaders with a strong sense of responsibility. Finally, artists, raised by Gen Xers with a sense of individualism, creativity, and social idealism. They have a strong sense of identity and desire for authenticity, and often create new cultural expressions that reflect changing values and beliefs of society. And that's my presentation on the fourth turning. Check it out.
Yeah. No,
So
I love-
it's a period in history when all the negative developments over a 4-generation period reaches a crescendo, if you will. It's a time when what we would call sociopaths are the rulers and are putting the squeeze on the populace. There are four generational cycles, and the first comes with a high, which is a period of confident expansion.
Everybody, I'll be summarizing the fourth.
There we go. Go
All right.
ahead.
Nope, keep going.
So the next comes with an awakening, which is a time of spiritual exploration and rebellion. Then you've got the unraveling, which is the individualism triumphs over crumbling institutions. And then last comes the crisis, which is the fourth turning. And this is where society passes through a great and perilous gate in history. And oftentimes, sadly to say, fourth turnings usually result in a war at some point in time. Yeah. I just was not inspired by the boomer example.
Yeah.
That person would not, well, maybe let me back up. I guess that person has inspired me personally to do some of the things that I'm doing, but yeah, I guess so. I just don't want to give that person credit.
Yeah. Well, so here's my take on it. I have so many thoughts when it comes to this topic, but I'm listening to it, and with the first and the second and the third and fourth turning, and obviously we're in the fourth turning now. I didn't realize we had been in the fourth turning since 2008, but it does make sense. However, the second turning, the awakening, the awakening time period, all the things that they kind of wrote during that time, that's also happening now.
Yes.
And so like some of my questions when it comes to this is, because we're so far technologically advanced, and we're going faster and faster. I mean, I think all this stuff's been in the works for a very long time, so it's not surprising to me. But I wonder how this will end up, not in maybe years past, in terms of, yes, we're still in the fourth turning, but I think that the folks that are making up or living during this fourth turning might be just a little different than in previous times, because we are also in the Great Awakening phase. There's a lot of people that are waking up. And so that could change the dynamic just a little bit, in my opinion. I don't know. What do you think?
I think that the advancement in technology is accurate, but I also think back 100 years, 120 years ago, and we were also in a phase of technological advance, and that's what brought on the Industrial Revolution. And when we had the automobile, we had electricity, flush toilets, all sorts of things that were starting to take over at that time. And so I would say that it's relevant in terms of technological advances for the time. There was tremendous change that happened during the previous fourth turning. I mean, when we had the fourth turning after the World Wars, it brought on all of that ingenuity that was already in place by the by the technological advancements that were done some 30 years prior to that. So I think that's exactly where we're sitting right now when you think about the advent of the internet about 30 years ago.
Yeah. But don't you think that because we're able to communicate so much more deeply with each other than we ever have before? I mean, I think that's a major factor. Obviously, this big fight, over the past several years over free speech and trying to prevent people, the Twitter and the bannings and, all this kind of stuff. I kind of see as like a threat to what I say their system, because I guess as we've talked about, the Larry Finks and the bloodlines and, the major control that they have over our financial system. And then they have all the data and all this stuff. And then, we've talked before about just like the possibility for banking, the crazy stuff that's going on with the banks now. And as we enter into this digital asset space, where we will be replacing fiat currency. And, from my research, listen to Mike Maloney and Bill Still, the old school guys talking about, what's happened in our economic situation when it comes to money and the lies that they've told. The fiat dollar was never meant to last more than 80 to 100 years. And then when, we started talking about this fourth turning, I looked at it and I'm like, this is definitely in line with that.
Sure.
So then my wheels start turning and I'm like, you got the same families involved over years and years. And what a beautiful way to manipulate the public over and over and over again. How the story is going to play out. Now you have this great, powerful tool with Aladdin and all the other software that they've got going on. And so I'm like, I guess it's a convenient explanation also. And one that normally when I first looked at it, I was just kind of like, oh yeah, that makes sense, and I kind of just blew it off not blew it off, but I didn't really think about it any deeper initially, because I'm like, well, it totally makes sense. You've got these cycles and the way parents raise their kids and all these things. But when you realize that they're putting all this outside influence into your life and they're the ones that are steering the ship, they have total control over this turning, don't they? And so
yeah,
I don't know. That's it's
the only thing that that I'd counter is when you're talking about having such an influential or a way of communicating with each other like never before. Well, we could have said that 100 years ago, 120 years ago, when we had the telegraph. We were communicating with people like never before. The telephone.
Yeah,
communicating
but not to this extent.
No, but when you take yourself back 120 years and you look at these new technologies, that was being able to communicate at that time like no other time in history.
True.
And here we are right now with this new turning that we're communicating in ways like has never occurred in history. It may have been in somebody's imagination. And, if you go through one of our rabbit holes, I think this stuff was well known about 120 years ago. It's just the society wasn't ready for it. Our infrastructure wasn't ready for it. It makes me think about, why Bitcoin. Bitcoin was the introduction in 2008. It was a message to what's happening with our financial system, and there is a different way to go about this financial system using the technology in a way that would be beneficial to all.
Yeah.
in a very, let's say constitutional, if you will, a free way of doing it. I wouldn't call it democratic because it was decentralized, a decentralized system, not ruled or managed by anyone or anything. Whereas we also have the same technology that is trying to rule us and control us with the very same technology. It's very interesting. So we have this yin yang thing going on with the technology, the information technology. And I think some people like to dub this time an information 5G warfare.
Yeah. Oh, it's definitely, I mean, there's definitely a war going on.
In some ways, yeah.
Most people are just, they're kind of, they don't know, they don't realize really what's happening because they're so distracted with all the other stuff that they put in our faces on a daily basis. Yeah. And I guess that's why, why I was a little, I don't want to say skeptical, but when it comes to this turning, the fourth turning is, or even the term malaise, right?
Yes.
So I started hearing it more, and like you're saying, they're starting to bring it up, and some of the people, even the folks that are the not the mainstream media people, but you have these others that are citizen journalists and stuff, starting to parrot the same talking points. And so that's where I came into thinking, it's a perfect explanation. And you can see that it historically it's happened time and time again. It fits beautifully into the mold. I was wondering, about the fact that we have young and old kind of coming together a little bit more than we have in the past, even though like some folks might not think that, but especially in the digital asset space, we have a lot of young, bright minds. Right. And although they have some of the talking heads out there calling people like us boomers, or, well, I don't even think I'm a boomer, but I'm not a boomer, actually. I'm an awakened person.
I'm a boomer and a Gen Xer.
Yeah.
So what do you say about that?
I've met so many super cool people for over the past several years, young and old. And for the first time, I mean, we're all kind of like, we're listening to each other, we're lifting each other up, we're spreading awareness, and we're trying to reach people in our way, right? I mean, us too. Somebody could watch our show or listen to our show and they're like, oh gosh, and other people are going to be like, yeah, I dig it. I'm connecting. I'm understanding what they're saying. And we have so many of us doing this that's why I really feel like this fourth turning could be different. Who knows what's going to happen.
I hope so.
By 2030, I mean, and the fact that, we're fighting, we're trying. So I don't know. It's just, we are living in interesting times, my friend.
It certainly is. And I do think if you're prepared for it, you can have, it will be very good when we get out of the other side. Is what do they say? You have to go through the darkness before you see the light. And so right now it's stressful. It seems kind of scary. There's a lot of pent up tension. And I think that's what all of this awareness is all about, and why there's so much attention being casted this way, is to, hey folks, this is not time to be complacent anymore, because as a fourth turning comes along, it is generally caused by complacency. It's like, somebody else is going to take care of it. There's no reason for me to get involved. I have no say in it. My vote doesn't count. I can't make it. One person can't make a change, but yes, you certainly can. And all it takes, I mean, it's a thing called synergy and mathematics. And if you just one person talking to another person, it's the classic networking effect.
Chain action, right?
It really does. And it's just like how you and I ended up connecting with each other. We had a conversation, and we connected with other people, and we had conversations, and our network grew. And that is the network effect. And so I think that this is what this whole awakening period is that's getting us to, it's going to get us through this fourth turning. Another point I wanted to say, and I don't think it was mentioned in the video, but you know, these turnings have been documented and researched back 500 years. So when we do look at, you know, maybe this turning is going to be a little different than the previous turning, I think it's going to be all based on the degree of warfare. So let's say I want to pivot to one of my favorite people that I've been following, and that's Jason Lowry, how he talks about, you know, we're at a point to where we really can't do more kinetically. If we do any more kinetically, we're all wiped out. So we don't want to be doing kinetic warfare. But how can we do warfare in a way to where we can project power, but do it in a way that is positive and doesn't kill people? And that's using energy. And so I think about this, it's just like, wow, it is really just a degree of this massive change that is going to happen through some sort of warfare. Right. But it's going to change. We're going to have a change in our monetary system. Monetary change systems have changed throughout the millennia. We used to trade beads and shells and pelts and all sorts of things. You know, the standards store of value was gold, and then there's silver, and now we're talking about Bitcoin. And I think all of this is it's kind of, I call it sausage making, coming together, and what's going to come out at the other end is probably going to be something pretty cool, but we're going to get through some ugliness first before we get there. Yeah, we'll have a settling down, and we'll get back to the basics. We'll get back to what's really important in our lives.
If this is going to last until 2030, that again, you know, it also makes sense, you know, the World Economic Forum, you know, Agenda 2030 and all this stuff.
Right.
They've got this stuff so mapped out, but we're definitely.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah, it all started clicking with, like, I'm just like, wow, man, these people are so good at manipulating. Well,
and you've also heard, and maybe I have this backward, and I know you know what I'm going to say here. So you have the term where millionaires becoming billionaires will follow astrology.
Oh, yeah.
But the billionaires becoming trillionaires will follow the charts.
Yeah.
Do I have that in the right order? Because I know that the two.
I think it's backwards. I think it is.
Yeah, it could be. It could be
I think
backward.
You follow the chart. I think the astrology. And in fact, there's this guy named Waters Above.
Yes, indeed.
Incredible. He had a talk with I don't know what is it, Bearable Bull guy or whatever. Right. And usually I don't follow that stuff, but I'm telling you, I was listening to this conversation they had, and it was fantastic. And the things that he was saying, I'm like, you know, I don't exactly know what all that stuff means, but it's their way of communicating with each other, in my opinion. And it's real. It's a real thing. So I'm like, this whole thing has just been, either people are studying the patterns, and then once you're smart enough to recognize the patterns, and it's kind of like one of those that I keep saying, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And so I've seen so many things now that, I mean, I'm paying attention to the finance guys on TV, and they make the gestures, you know, and I think about sports, and they're, you know, they have codes. So what makes people think that these guys aren't talking in code when they're, you know, using their hand signals? I mean, they totally.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. I wish I knew what it meant, but I don't. But man, to know what they were talking about.
In Waters Above, he was using both charts and astrology.
Yep.
And tying them together, such as, well, like when he was talking about Bitcoin, bull marketing in a solar eclipse, and then when you would have a bear market in a lunar eclipse, and then he would show the chart where they matched up.
Yep.
And so I found that very, very interesting information.
Interesting indeed, right?
Yes. So, and then I heard was it Jamie Dimon, I believe, talking about something similar to this. Didn't quite get into the astrology word, but very just relaxed about, hey, we're just going to make a change, and it's just going to happen, and we can't stop it. And it's like, well, you know exactly what's coming.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? If you know what this stuff is, if it's already planned out, or you understand the patterns, right? You can speak really confidently about what's coming, just like Larry Fink saying, we're going to be in a time of malaise,
Right.
Yeah, you know it because you freaking
You created it. Yes.
Implementing these plans. So come on now.
Yeah.
You're not special.
Well, to wrap all of this up, even though the situation we're in may have been engineered many, many, many years ago, what can we do to protect ourselves from the inevitable changes that are coming? They are coming.
Yeah, they
What
really
are we
are.
going to do about it? So
Remain positive.
Remain positive. Love on your family.
Yes.
Sorry, hearing my dog, he's participating. I apologize for that.
Love him.
But yeah.
He wants to be part of the conversation.
Yeah, so we just don't need that in our video. But in any case, and I also say, if you don't have a relationship with God, and that's something that you've been considering, that is something maybe, to look further into and take more seriously.
Yeah.
Because in many ways, this is not a political thing. This is more of a divine thing that's happening, especially when you look at how many generations and how many years this has been going on. This is beyond our time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you got to take.
I'm so happy that I have a relationship with God, and I'm excited because I'm seeing more and more folks come about. And it's not about going to church or having a religion or anything. It's about a relationship with God, your own relationship with God. And once you have it, I mean, you can't explain it. It's just fantastic. So I really pray that people do kind of open their hearts up a little bit and ask and find him, because he's there.
Because even much of religion has been infiltrated as well. So, I mean, fair enough if somebody is leery. But just like anything else, you just investigate, and you open up your heart, and you move forward. Yeah. And the other thing you got to do is you just have got to take personal responsibility. You can't expect other people to do things for you. Melissa and I are trying to bring you to a place of drinking some water, but we can't make you drink. We're bringing you to a point of maybe ask some questions like we have that's led us down to the rabbit holes and has allowed us to gain some new information and new things to ponder on. I know certainly over the last 3 years, the things that we've stumbled along together has been very revealing and has altered quite a few things that we do in our families.
Even crushed my spirit in some respect. Like being so disappointed in things that I loved, and kind of looking at them with a fresh eye, and it's like, whoa,
right, exactly.
Where your attention goes, your energy flows, and some of my attention was not being spent on things that did any good for me whatsoever. So,
which is engineered by design.
Exactly.
Yes. And the other thing too, and we can't say it enough, get involved locally. Local is the answer. When everything collapses, and hopefully it doesn't, but let's say all the supply chains, let's say communications and all of that, let's say if that was the situation, how are you going to move forward? It's going to be in your local economy. You're going to have to rely on your neighbor, your local hardware, your local corner store, if you still have one. Those are the places you're going to want to rely on your local rancher, your local dairy farmer, your local chicken farmer. And also know who your processor is, who is actually harvesting the food that you're going to be consuming. Because in this day and age, with the multinational corporations that are now have dominance over our food supply, we don't know what's in the food supply. They're adding various things that will enhance the growth of the animal that we're eating or the plant materials that we're eating. And we don't know how that affects the body, the human body. So bringing it back to basics again, when you keep it local, you know what's going on, and you can handshake that rancher, that farmer, and look them in the eye and ask them what's in their product. And all of these folks are feeding their own families with the very things that they grow on their own land.
Yeah, and teaching yourself how to grow stuff. I mean,
Right.
I am no expert at
Right.
things, but I've been trying to teach myself, and even the indoor hydroponic, the cracky method. There's all different kinds of things that you can do to learn how to grow some stuff, because you don't want to think, oh, we're in America, in the USA, and you don't think, we've been so blessed, so very blessed. We haven't really suffered, even in times of hardship. I don't think we've suffered half as much
That's
as
true.
a lot of people in other countries. So,
Right.
the thing is being grateful for what we do have, and understanding that the resources that we have around us, we can be self-sufficient. We can.
Yes, we can.
We have to take the initiative to do it, but we can definitely be self-sufficient.
And
But
it's not hard. It's just a matter of putting a little bit of time in, or asking for some help. I mean, you can trade skills. Somebody who knows how to do something that you don't know how to do, but you know how to do something they don't know how to do. Trade your skills.
yeah, I'll trade you tomatoes for coming and
Exactly.
unclogging my toilet or
Yeah.
something like that. I mean, there are so many things, you're right, that we can contribute, or even people that you might have a disability or something that prevents you from doing something physical, but you tap into your skills that you have, and try to teach yourself to think critically again.
Right.
Start asking why. How does that work? I mean, it can be the simplest thing, just going outside and, seeing a bug flying, like wondering, like, where does that bug live and how does he, whatever, it doesn't matter. Just ask questions. And the more questions you ask, the more answers you get, the more questions, and you're expanding your thinking so much to where you will have confidence to try to do these things for yourself, or reach out to,
Absolutely.
like you're saying, get to know your local people around you.
Right.
Because
And
those
the
are
other
going
thing,
to be screwed if you
the
don't.
other thing, yeah, exactly. Yeah, you will be screwed. The other thing you want to do is to have some something that has a store of value that you can exchange. You might want to have some gold and some silver. If you look at our Constitution, you'll see that those are that's national currency, that's minted currency. So it's not fiat currency, it's actually backed by a precious metal. So that's very important to have some of that on hand.
How would somebody know what they're looking for? Would they just go ask somebody? Like when you're talking about minted, like
minted would be like a Morgan silver dollar.
Oh, okay.
Okay. If you just have a silver round, for instance, that is not currency. And let's say if we had we're coming up close to time, but let's say if our government went rogue on us and they were confiscating the metals, they can take the metals, but not the currency.
Okay.
That's how the wealthy was able to keep their gold when gold was confiscated in the 30s.
Of course, because they understood what to do.
That's correct. And Bitcoin. And Melissa and I will have a show about Bitcoin, one of our favorite subjects coming up here in the near future, because that's a very important asset to have in your bucket. You want to have some gold, have some silver, have some Bitcoin, have some skills to trade.
Maybe have a little bit of XRP.
Yeah, a little XRP.
Not financial advice.
Yeah. Well, we're coming up to the end of the show, and we want to thank you for tuning in to Beyond the Brink. You can find our previous shows at VitaBroadcastNetwork.com, and you can also follow us on YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, Twitter.
Gosh, I
and that
think
you
we're
would
on
find us at
Screema.
Vita Broadcast. Yeah, we're on Screema. We're on Spotify. And so we just thank you so much for being here and want to wish you a very good week. And we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you so much. I hope you guys all have a great day.